Hey everyone, I hope that you are having a fantastic day. Welcome to the Laser Channel. My name is Greg, and this video is going to be the first in a video series all featuring the Hydbond Adhesive and Hydbond products. Stay tuned as I explain more about the Hydbond Adhesive, and I'm going to be doing a step-by-step project using the Hydbond Leatherette material. Thanks for joining me in this first video in a series. This first video I'm going to be using a hobby grade laser diode machine. This is the Xtool D1 machine. I'm going to be using a regular clothes iron to activate the Hydbond material. I'm actually going to be doing a project using the Hydbond Leatherette material. This comes in with the Hydbond adhesive already on the back side. In future videos, I'm going to be changing out the laser diode machine to a CO2 laser, and instead of a clothes iron to apply the heat activated Hydbond, I'm going to be using a hat press or a regular garment press. In a future video after that, I'm going to change out the CO2 laser to a fiber laser and continuing to use a quality heat press. Each video in this series, I'm going to slowly step up the quality and the speed of the machinery being used to work with the Hydbond products, but know that I have good results using any level of all of this equipment. The quick background on why I started using Hydbond material is for some of my personal projects and for client projects. I had these little patches that I made on my machine. The patches turned out great. However, the patches do not have any type of adhesive or anything to attach it to a hat or a garment. And I scoured the internet and I found a liquid adhesive, a glue, and this worked kind of okay. The glue dries incredibly fast, so it's kind of a race in time of applying enough glue on the back of the patch, applying it to the material, having enough glue so that it stays attached, but not so much glue that it starts squirting out the side. It's okay if I was doing 1 or 2 items, but if I have a batch of about 20, 30, 40, 50 hats, this is just not the way to do it. It's too cumbersome, too messy, and it just doesn't work too well on a production scale. This is where I got in contact with Josh and Noah over at Hydbond. They explained what their material is and why it works so well. And this stuff is pretty cool. Let's check it out with a quick close-up. Here's a little patch of that Hydbond adhesive, and if I peel this corner off, we'll see that it is very thin, but when I pull on it, it does have a lot of strength, even though it's this thin, and when properly activated, this stuff really hangs onto the patch, onto the garment. Here's some pre-testing that I did. Here's the actual leatherette material that I'll be using. Here's that nice gold color that comes through, and when properly activated, this stuff just sticks onto the sample fabric. I have some other patch material that I used, and this I applied the Hydbond material to the back side, cut it out, and attached it. And I mean, this stuff is not coming off. Let's get started on making the first patch using the black Hydbond Leatherette material. Throughout this process of creating this project, you'll see me using different products and different things throughout. Don't worry, I will have links to all of those items in the description down below, starting out, of course, with the Hydbond products. In just a second, I'm going to jump into the Lightburn software and show you the settings that I'm using to get some really great results with this product. Before I do that though, I do want to show you a close-up of the test patterns I did to generate the settings that I'm using. Inside Lightburn, there is a test pattern grid, and I use that for engraving, and what I'm looking for is just that gold color to start coming through. When I go over here, and maybe if I tilt it just a little bit, we can see that I burned all the way through that gold foil, so it is very easy to do. I went on to do another one, fine-tuning the settings, and I've got a couple that look pretty good. Once I had that, I went and moved on to cutting. And finally over here, I've got a nice grid work where I'm cutting all the way through. And what I want to do, of course, is cut through the leatherette material, but I want to cut through the glue adhesive layer and actually the liner too. And a 10-watt laser diode can easily do that. Inside the Lightburn software, I have my graphic already loaded in. I have the channel logo, and then on the very outside, I have this double line. I'm going to have that engraved as a border. I think that'll look really sharp. And then this blue layer, that is going to be the cut layer. So let's go over to this first engraving layer, and I'll double click on that. And we'll see that I've got a speed of 65 millimeters per second at a max power of 20%. Now, when I was doing my test grids in Lightburn, I was driving way too much power into that material. So it took a little bit of testing to realize it doesn't take a whole lot to get the engraving effect on this material, which is really neat. If you have a 5-watt laser, you can still do this project. I have bidirectional on. There's no need for crosshatch. And I found really great results with lines per inch set at basically about 300. Moving on to the line layer, that's going to cut out the patch. When I go inside of that, we'll see that I slowed the speed down to 6 millimeters per second. I'm going to run it at 100% power. And that's all I need to take a look at here. This is all going to be done in one pass. When I was doing my test grids, I did have some challenges of getting this gold foil to show through without burning all the way through. And here's a secret that I found that worked really well. When I set the focus of the laser, rather than set it down to the work material, I took a steel ruler that's about 0.1 inches thick, and that's what I set the focus of the laser machine to. So I'm defocusing the laser machine by about 0.1 inches. I can use this defocus laser head for both the engraving and the cutting of the material. That looks good. I'm going to put the laser enclosure to capture any of the smoke exhaust coming off of this project, and I'll also be turning on the air assist. I've got everything all set up and I'm ready to hit the start button. We'll see if this pops right out. Oh, look at that, a nice clean cut. This 10-watt laser is able to cut through the leatherette material, the Hydbond adhesive, and the release liner on the back. So now I've got a standalone patch that I can put for later use, or I can send this out to a client or a customer. Let's go over to the main camera and take a close-up view of this. Here's that nice close-up. We can see some of that gold glimmer is coming through. There is a little bit of residue on the top surface here that will need to be cleaned off. When I was setting up for this video, the first time I cleaned a sample patch, I used some denatured alcohol, and this was definitely not the stuff to use. It just didn't work really well. Instead, I went and got some other cleaner that I had already in the studio here, and this is LA's Totally Awesome. This can be found at the Dollar Tree or on Amazon, and I'll be using that to clean this patch off. Wow, now that this is all cleaned up, this gold foil is really coming through. It really makes this patch definitely stand out. With the patch engraved and cut out, it's time for me to clear the table out and make room so that I can iron this on to a sample piece of cloth that I have. It's now time to heat apply this patch to a sample of denim cloth that I have. Now, when I talked to Josh over at Hydbond, he let me know that to properly activate the Hydbond adhesive, it needs to achieve a temperature of 220 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 10 seconds. Off camera, I did some testing with an iron and a temperature meter, and what I did is took a sample of the patch material and put the temperature probe underneath the patch material so that I could measure the temperature of the adhesive. And I found a clothes iron set to the cotton setting for about 30 seconds will achieve the activation temperature and time for the adhesive. For this demonstration, I'm going to use this old board that I have to place underneath this denim cloth. That way any of the heat from the iron won't go through to my nice table. Peeling the release liner off reveals that the Hydbond adhesive goes all the way up to the edge of the patch, but not beyond. So that's a real nice way to make sure that I have proper adhesion of the patch down to my material. I'll place that down. That looks good. And I don't want to put the iron directly on top of this. Instead, I want to use something like parchment paper. A lot of times people use this with heat pressing. I happen to have a sheet of thin Teflon, so I'm going to use that. And to time this out, I'm going to grab my cell phone and time out 30 seconds. 30 seconds are on the timer on my cell phone, and I'm ready to now apply the heat. And really, I just need to make sure that the iron is sitting flat on top and hitting the start button there too on the timer. And I don't need to really smush this down with a whole lot of heat. I just have a light hand on the top of the iron to make sure that I'm applying even heat across the face of the patch. I've got just about 10 seconds left to go here. We can watch the countdown together. Whenever I heat press, this chime that I hear, I always like to think of that as the money bell. If you're running a small business, you know anytime that you hear a timer go off when you're heat pressing means that you're making money. I'm ready to peel the Teflon off, and I'll move my timer out of the way. It's important to resist the urge to try and pick up the edges of that patch right away to check the adhesion. When I was doing the testing with my temperature probe, I found that for about the first 30 seconds after I removed heat off of the patch, the adhesive was still at a fairly high temperature. I need that adhesive to cool back down. I also need the internal structure of the patch material itself to cool back down and everything get up to full strength. Even though the patch material and adhesive is still cooling down, it is safe to handle, but again, just don't try and pick at the edges. It has been about a minute, so let's take a close-up look at how well this patch is adhered to this denim material. This thing is looking awesome, and what I really want to show you is where the patch meets the material. When I rotate this all the way around, we'll see that there's no adhesive that's squeezing out from the patch. We'll go all the way around the perimeter here, and we'll check out that it is sealed down to that denim material, that there's no little gap there. And that's what I love about this adhesive is it's cut perfectly to the size of the patch, and there's nothing squeezing out, and there's no little lip to catch on and lift up. Using the Hydbond material, a laser diode machine, and a common household iron, we're able to create this nice engraved patch, had it cut out, heat pressed it. It's definitely stuck onto this denim material. And this is a great start to enter the world of making leatherette patches and making sure that they absolutely stick to the material that you're heat pressing it to. Join me in the next video where I change out the laser diode machine for a higher power, faster CO2 laser machine, and I'll also change out this clothing iron to a proper heat press that has a much better temperature control system and a built-in timer. Until next time, learn, create, and share.